Hi, Owen Howe again. Here I'm with another video. This time I'm going to be talking about paying for college. This is obviously one of the most common questions I get from meeting with parents, and there is a lot of information about paying for college. However, many of the presentations I see don't necessarily hit the point or becomes overly general or overly specific. So I'm going to tackle this my way, and let me know if this hits the spot. First, obviously, college is a lot more expensive than it used to be. For this coming year's cost of attendance, the UCs, you're probably looking at the mid 30s to $40,000 a year, including room and board. So cost of attendance is including room and board, books, transportation, personal expenses, everything. Cal State's 26 to 30 a year. Privates, I've seen some privates in the $40 to $50,000 range. The most expensive private colleges are going to be in the $80,000+ range. And many private colleges want to be among the most expensive colleges in the country because oftentimes most expensive means most value. And although community colleges are relatively inexpensive, if you include room and board, if you include books and all the other expenses that go with it, you're still going to be looking at almost $15,000 a year. So don't feel it is significantly cheaper than even the Cal States, but don't think there's nothing. And realistically, even if you don't go to school, there's going to be expenses too. How am I expected to pay for all this? Fortunately, colleges don't expect all parents to pay the full price. And just read the new data today, discounting is at an all-time high. So the average college is discounting the tuition by 53%. So there is significant discounting going on, and this discounting is used by financial aid, so financial need, but there's also discounting based on merit scholarships, so based on student desirability. And I'll talk a little bit about both of them. So let's start with the need-based aid. It's a little bit easier to understand. The parents will be filling out the FAFSA, which is the most common financial aid form on October 1st, starting October 1st of your student senior year. So the FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and it's used by all colleges. There is also a form at certain private colleges called the CSS Profile. And the CSS Profile you'll find is used by usually the most expensive private colleges. So around here in Southern California, you'll see like Pepperdine, the Claremont colleges, Occidental, USC. These schools will use the CSS Profile. And one of the questions you should be asking is, why are there two forms? The FAFSA doesn't necessarily ask all the questions. CSS Profile asks two questions that the FAFSA doesn't, two major questions. One is home equity. The FAFSA does not look at home equity as part of their calculation, while the CSS Profile does. And the other part about the other question CSS Profile asks is how income and assets of the non-custodial parent. The FAFSA only asks for the parent who pays more than 50% of the student's expenses. The CSS Profile will ask for the other parent also. Both of them are going to be based on prior tax year, and this is relatively new for those. This is probably about 3-4 years old. So for the class of 2022, so the high school graduated class of 2022 or beginning college class of 2022, they'll be looking at the tax year of 2020. So this means by October 1st of your senior year, you should have all your, you should have filed taxes already. You should have all your tax paperwork ready to go. And the good thing is the FAFSA is much easier to complete now than it used to be because of the new IRS retrieval tool. So what it does is it links you could link your IRS account to your FAFSA, so the FAFSA just pulls all the information from your tax return. And what we found is they tend to be audited a lot less frequently. However, if you have not filed your taxes or you don't use the IRS retrieval tool, those families tend to get audited more often. First, what's the purpose of these financial aid forms? One of the myths I hear is, oh, you fill out this financial aid form FAFSA doesn't give me any money. That's a common one. I just want to set this straight. So the purpose of the FAFSA is to determine your effective family contribution. So how much the parents can afford. That's it. It comes based on bunch of information such as parent income, student income, parent assets, student assets, family size, how many students are in college, age of the older parent, because the closer you're to retirement, the less likely you're going to be able to spend money for your kid's college. And the good thing is there are plenty of EFC estimators out there. I see it on Big Future, so this is a College Board website, and also on a website called fin8.org. Both of them are leading websites in the industry. You won't go wrong. And they don't require you to put in 20 million pieces of information. You should be able to get a good estimate very quickly. But as I mentioned, the purpose of the FAFSA and the CSS is to calculate your effective family contribution, your EFC, how much you could afford. So I think one question that I often get is, so they are looking at the parents' information, financial information. What happens if I tell the FAFSA that I'm not supporting my child's further college education? What are they going to say? And so obviously this is one of the most common questions that we get. And this is the FAFSA's reply. So your student will be considered as your dependent for financial aid purposes if he or she is 23 and under. However, there are some exceptions. The exceptions are your child is married, your child has a dependent, so a kid, joined the military, or has already obtained a bachelor's degree. So the first three, I don't know if they are highly desirable options. You might end up having other problems for the sake of qualifying for more financial aid. So there are actually organizations out there that would serve as matchmakers for students who want to get married for financial aid purposes. But I don't know what happens if you need to what happens when you get a divorce. I'm not even going to go there. I do not recommend getting married or having a kid so your child could become independent student for FAFSA considerations. So just give you some basic financial aid math. So the colleges offer financial aid based on your EFC. So as we talked about, that's how much you could afford. So for the first example, your EFC is calculated as $30,000 a year. So they calculated you could afford $30,000 a year. Your son or daughter goes to UCLA, costs $37,000 a year. So your financial need is $7,000 a year. Your same example, if your son or daughter goes to USC, that costs $82,000 a year. So your financial need will be 82 minus 30, that would be $52,000 a year. Okay, so we're just talking about need, how much need you have. And so the need will come in terms of the financial aid package. So the colleges offers the financial aid package based on what your needs are. So if you're using the first example of UCLA, you qualify for $7,000 worth of aid. And then it's the other example at USC, you qualify for $50,000, $52,000 of financial aid. And this financial aid is really incorporated into three parts. So grants, money that you get for free. So it could be from the federal government, it could be from the state, it could be from the college themselves. You'll qualify for some loans. Student loans would be federally subsidized, up to $3,500 a year. Federal unsubsidized, up to $2,000. Really, it's subsidized plus unsubsidized. This adds up to $5,500 a year. And subsidized loans are actually kind of cool because subsidized loans, the federal government actually pays your interest until 6 months after you're done with school. Unsubsidized loans rack up interest from day one. So it makes sense to take the subsidized loan first before you take the unsubsidized loans. And then there's some other loans like parent loans, and then I'll go into that a little bit later. There's also work study. Federal work study, often between $2,000 and $5,000 a year, depending on the agreement the school has with the government. The reason why federal work study is a job, so it's usually just a campus job. And the reason why it is considered financial aid is because the federal government actually pays half of your student salary. And your financial aid package will be a mixture of these three types. And based on your and you'll get different mix of these three things based on your financial need, based on how desirable your student is, and based on their financial resources. Because grants, the federal government and the state government can only pay so much. And so the institution has to pay for grants, and some institutions have a lot more money than others. So what's a good financial aid package? Obviously, you want to get as much grants versus loans. Student loans should consist no more than $7,000 to $8,000 a year, because you don't want your student to be so indebted that they're $100,000 in debt by the time they graduate college. Then it limits a lot of options. And even worse, if they have a huge student loan debt and they don't finish college, that's even worse. As I mentioned, federally subsidized loans are highly desirable because it's interest-free until you're 6 months after your student graduates from college. Even if you don't need it, you might take it and invest it, do something with it. You could probably make the money work for you too. Just as a baseline, the UC tries to cap self-help, so this would be loans and work study, to $9,600 a year. And so I think that's a good baseline to compare. If your student receives a package where there's more than $10,000 of student loans a year, it's not going to be a very good package. It's not a good package. And then if you see significantly less in loans, obviously the better package, the fewer loans you're going to get. Okay. The other part of the coin, of discounting, is merit-based aid. So they are giving scholarships, and scholarships are commonly offered by moderately selective colleges, both public and private. The most selective colleges don't offer a lot of merit-based scholarships, if any, because the most selective schools already have a tough time splitting hairs between students. How are they going to split hairs between scholarship applicants? And many of the most selective colleges would rather put the resources into need-based financial aid rather than merit-based scholarships. Merit-based aid is going to be a combination of grades, difficulty of coursework taken, test scores. Some merit scholarships might be leadership-based, so that would be a separate application. Some of them might be service-based, so that would be a separate application also. And many colleges are quite upfront about the merit aid criteria. It really depends on the part of the country. I see schools in the Midwest and the Southeast are very upfront about merit aid qualifications. So if you have this GPA and this test scores, you automatically get X amount of money per year, or with a blank scholarship per year. So which helps greatly when it comes to budgeting and planning. So let's consider this financial aid package. This is one I got from a student a couple months ago. So I'll give you a few minutes to look. So you could see there's a bunch of grants. You got $23,000 as a scholarship, plus some federal Pell Grant, so that's from the federal government. This federal supplemental grant is from the federal government too. The university gave some $4,000 of a grant, so financial aid. And then there are some loans from the school also. So $3,500 in subsidized, $2,000 for unsubsidized, and then $4,000 for work study. So it adds up to almost $45,000 a year. Okay, and you could see, just summarizing, almost $36,000 in loans, grants, $5,500 in loans, and $4,000 worth of work study. I think the bigger question is, it forgot something. It forgot the cost of attendance. Okay, you got this financial aid package, but it doesn't. The colleges aren't always great in their financial aid letters telling you about how much it costs. Okay, you got $45,000 worth of financial aid. If the school costs $45,000 a year, great. So your financial aid package covers everything, even though you have to take some loans and do some work study. But what happens in this case is the college's cost of attendance is $62,000 a year. Okay, so if you could afford, if your EFC it's at $17,000, okay, this is quite affordable. Okay, you got a financial aid package that matches up with your needs. Great. However, in this case, the family, so that's how they got the $17,000. It's $62,000 minus $45,000 for financial aid. However, this family's EFC is only $4,000. They could only afford $4,000, and it's calculated that they could only afford $4,000. So this means that what happens to the other 13? How is the school expected? How's the family expected to come up with that other $13,000? This is not this. I'm not here to scare you, but this happens more frequently than you think. What happened in this situation is the student got gapped. They were offered a financial aid package that doesn't cover full need. Most colleges claim they do not cover full need. Some do. The most selective colleges typically will cover the full need because they know some of it's going to be with student loans and it's not their money. In this case, they expect the parent to take a plus loan, a parent loan, and the student to find outside scholarship to cover that shortfall, which I don't find it to be reasonable. I had one instance where the student was able to get a scholarship to cover that shortfall. Great for her. Remember, the parent is already on the hook for $4,000 a year. Now, the school is expecting the parent to take even more, borrow money in their name, in addition to the student borrowing money in his name, which I think it's a little unfair. And it unfortunately happens at many moderately selective to less selective colleges, and even a couple highly selective colleges, just because they don't have enough resources for everyone. And it tends to happen for the students who are in the bottom half, bottom third, bottom quarter of the accepted student pool. They know they could give financial aid packages. They know they won't be able to give a sufficient package for every student that they accept. And really, it's a way for them to say thanks, but no thanks. I've heard of instances where one of my counselor colleagues actually contacted the director of admission at the school to explain the gap to the student and to encourage the student to go somewhere else. Because we don't want that student, in this case, I think the student would have to take another $7,000 or $8,000 in loans a year, of a private loan a year, and that's just not reasonable when they're already expected to take on, the share of student loans on the financial aid package. So the important thing about this is thinking about your strategy. So you have a decent idea of how the financial aid process works. You have a decent idea of how merit scholarships work. And your strategy is going to be dependent on your EFC and how strong your student is academically. The stronger your student and the more you can afford, obviously the more options you're going to have. If your EFC is very high, let's say over $80,000 a year, you probably won't be qualifying for a lot of financial aid event. And you might qualify for some loans, but probably not grants. And you probably need to want to think about and work with a specialist on how to generate more tax savings. if you aren't generating tax savings already. For others, you might want to work with a consultant or work among yourself, work on your own, just to reduce your EFC. One common way to reduce EFC is transferring assets. Moving the assets from the student to the parent. The FAFSA calculates the student assets is weighed a lot more towards the EFC. The student asset is counted a lot more when it comes to determine the EFC than the parent's asset. You'll find that grandparents are not asked about on the FAFSA. So there are different ways to do it, but however, remember, it is you're looking at prior year. So for the current juniors, so the class of 2022, they're looking at your 2020 tax information, and that has already happened. So you're looking, you're looking for, you need to start thinking about this in the freshman and sophomore year of high school to ensure that you're going to qualify for the most financial aid possible. So get your EFC as low as possible and legal. So let's just throw in some vignettes, I guess, some examples. So, I work at a comprehensive high school, so we get, students, a pretty diverse group of students. And so oftentimes I'll get some students who are with low EFC. Parents are not well off at all, but they do really well. 4+ GPA, strong test scores, they're high achieving students. My recommendation for these is let's aim for the highly selective schools. These are the schools that could give the financial aid package, the great financial aid packages, because they have money. And many of those schools will even offer fly-in programs for prospective students. So this would be, they would fly the student out and get them to see the school for a day or two. And because they also know that, they also know that for many of these underrepresented students, if they haven't seen their college, they're probably not going to choose them. And so take advantage of these, for these flying options. There's also an organization called QuestBridge. They do something called College Match Scholarship. So they work with low-income students, and they work out deals with probably about 60 colleges out there where they are guaranteed a full financial aid with no loans. Okay, it's not. It can be tricky to navigate. You need someone to nominate. QuestBridge will usually reach out to students from their PSATs, so they see, they can identify, strong scores and self-disclosed grades. And and then they will be able to identify lower income families. And for those students, I would use the UCs and the CSUs as backups. If chances are, though, the highly selective private colleges will be able to offer a significantly better financial aid package than the UCs and CSUs would. You got some high EFC families, high EFC and high achieving students. The strategy is going to be a little different, and depending on how high the EFC student may or may not qualify for financial aid at the most selective colleges. And I think the first question you need to ask is, can you afford the most expensive colleges with minimal financial aid? And many of those families end up choosing the UCs because the UCs cost significantly less than at a private college without financial aid, or they would consider out-of-state public colleges, which would have lower price tag. They would also be looking at private colleges where, even the price tag is higher, but their student is most likely going to get a scholarship that could knock it down to the UC price point or even below the UC price point. And there are quite a few schools that would do that, and I would say even northerly or even more selective colleges. So don't discount them. You got middle of the road EFC, middle of the road achievement. So what do we do? These students will get a decent decent financial aid package at the UC is affordable. You're probably going to be looking at the $9,600 in self-help. These families will probably just get loans from the Cal States. They're probably not going to get any grants. I would recommend considering colleges on the Western Undergraduate Exchange. These are out-of-state public universities, and they actually offer They offer a discount to students from the western third of the country. And I could definitely make a video and give you a little bit of explanation about what the WUI is. And they will need to get a financial aid package that has both merit and need-based aid from private colleges, because these are students who are probably not going to get into the most selective schools and the most affluent schools. The good thing is these colleges exist. There are a lot of these colleges out there that are looking for the mid-EFC, the students with mid-EFCs and strong, solid students, especially outside of California. They exist. These schools exist, and there are reasonable and very good financial aid packages out there. How about low EFC? How about just using the example I gave earlier? So that student is low EFC. Family could only afford $4,000 a year for college. They'll get a decent but affordable package at the UCs and CSUs, similar to the last criteria, last segment. This is a group that's likely to be gapped at certain colleges. There are going to be some colleges that just don't have the resources to give a full financial aid package to that student. These students need to be open with their college search. You don't want to be married to one school. And fortunately, some colleges' mission is to serve this population. That's what their mission is. So I know our brother school, St. Mary's College of California, they're required to take 25% of their population to be Pell Grant eligible students. So these would be the low EFC students. And the low EFCs, in order for them to enroll 25% Pell, they need to be able to provide a financial aid package that could attract them. You could accept them, but if you don't give a good financial aid package, they're not going to come. I think you also need to be open in terms of location. Where it is. You'll be location in different parts of the country. Most parts of the country have lower cost of living than California. You might also want to throw out the idea of commuting. I'm not saying that's the top choice, but in case there are your student didn't get the right financial aid package, there's always the option of commuting from home and going to a local school, and that's going to save significant money. How about middle of the road EFC, but low achievement? So low achievement, I would say below a 3.0 GPA, probably 20 or below in the ACT. So these students are going to be admissible to many Cal States, but they won't be UC eligible. So, and they will probably not qualify for enough merit-based aid at private colleges. They could get in, but they probably won't get a lot of money from them. The money will go to the middle achieving or higher achieving students. The Western Undergraduate Exchange is still an option for some of these students, for many of these students. I know in my experience, many parents with this particular profile would just say, hey, son, you're going to go to a junior college instead of a four-year college. Okay, I could definitely understand that, but just bear in mind that the outcome is better starting at a four-year college over a two-year college. However, I'm not the person who is paying the college bill. So, whoever is paying the college bill is going to make the decisions. So that's all I've got for now. So thank you for viewing. Please reach out to me via my contact page or email me at owenhound824@gmail.com if you have any questions. Thank you so much for your time.